Hey guys, it's Dave. I'm starting to get a little bit worried about some issues going on in the economy that could have a negative impact on housing. It's been resilient so far. We're down 3% year over year. We had a pretty decent drop towards the end of 2022, and obviously, volume has crashed. I see a lot of videos that talk about the housing crash. Volume has certainly crashed, but prices have held in for the most part nationally. There's a few pockets where you're seeing more than a 10% decline in prices, but we've held in there. But I want to give you 5 things that I'm watching in the economy that I have a little bit of concern that they might kind of take root, send us into a recession. They've been forecasting a recession for a while, but this one could actually, these items could actually be pretty painful for the overall economy, not just a slow in GDP and then a rise back up. So here's where we're at. The first one that I want to point your attention to is student loans. They put a moratorium on student loans over the pandemic, and for some reason, it's still in effect. 3+ years after COVID hit, people have still not had to make their student loan payments. That moratorium is ending starting on June 30th. It comes at a time where, we've already raised interest rates 5% in a short period of time, and the student loan market is actually pretty big. You're looking at a chart that kind of shows all the different non-housing debt balances. And student loans is a $1.6 trillion balance. It is bigger than auto loans. It's bigger than credit cards. It's about just as big for as far as personal debt goes. It's second place only to housing debt. So this is a big number, 1.6 trillion, that is now going to have to start making payments. And it comes at a time when we see the average interest rate on credit cards is at an all-time high at near 20%. And then the balance of total outstanding credit cards is at an all-time high. We peaked right before COVID here, and then because of stimulus, we were able to pay some credit card balances down. We've passed the peak that we hit at the great financial crisis back in 2008. So we're looking at almost $1 trillion, that's this line here, in credit card debt at record high interest rates. And then now we're going to add a bunch of, sorry, this chart, add the student loan debt balance on top of that. Now it's going to have to start coming due. This chart actually shows the amount of delinquencies for different various personal debt. You'll see here we've got a peak back in the 2008 range. And then this anomaly here, this is the student loan one, because as of 2020, nobody had to pay on it. So your default rate goes to the floor. These bottom two lines is mortgages and HELOCs. They were hovering down basically below 1% for quite some time. Credit cards and auto loans and some of the other ones, have been higher, but they're already starting to hit a little bit of a slope up currently. And now when we throw student loans into that, I think you get the picture. That's the point I'm trying to make. It is a big number, 1.6 trillion, and now it's coming due. It's a little bit frustrating that they didn't use the student loan payments to fight inflation back in maybe 2021. If they would have stopped the moratorium on payments, we could have probably cooled inflation down by making people pay their bills instead of going on vacations and kind of lighting a fire in the economy. And so it's a missed opportunity, I think, and it's long overdue. And now it might be coming at the absolute wrong time when the consumer is already feeling the stress of this. It would have been better to kind of smooth that out before prices got out of control. The second thing that's got my attention is what they're calling the Airbnb bust. This is a chart that shows the amount of supply of Airbnb listings by year. And so the different colors that you see kind of on this chart, this is 2022 and then 21 and then 20. And what it boils down to is 54% of all Airbnb listings have been added over the pandemic, a huge amount of supply. And that's fine because we needed it. That was a really good booming business during the pandemic. People didn't travel as far. They would do staycations. They would work remotely. There was a really good demand for that. The problem is a lot of people came and speculated, bought multiple short-term rentals, made a business out of it. And you're now seeing kind of a mix between an increase in supply and a decrease in demand. That's a double whammy. That never works well. There's an article here on from time.com that talks about too many rich people bought Airbnbs and now they're sitting on empty supply. This goes down to mention a couple of different anecdotal things where, one guy kind of said, I went from 80% booking to 0 bookings. There's different Facebook groups where people go to complain about, how they're getting too much competition now, and now they're not seeing the bookings that they did. And this could impact the housing demand. Right now, we have a shortage of supply, but this could put some supply into play that if there's too much of it, we could see downward pressure on prices. That's great if you're a buyer. It's not so great if you're a seller to see housing prices fall. We do need the affordability. And so I would rather see interest rates drop in order to get that affordability than someone's housing asset have to fall in price. So look to see that, to see how many homes that were short-term rentals either get converted to long-term rentals, which would bring rent prices down. And that could be a very good thing actually for the economy. But if people decide to sell, then you're looking at too much supply, downward pressure on prices. And like I said, I would rather that we have lower mortgage rates than lower home prices if we're going to try and fix the affordability issue. But that kind of brings me up to the next issue that I'm seeing. This one is a new one to me that I saw in a tweet today. I'm not going to show the tweet. I don't have that pulled up, but it's the idea that there's a sweet spot that mortgage rates could fall to that could actually cause prices to drop. What you're looking at here is the Fed futures rate monitor. This is just a survey of a market where they look at the Fed futures rate, and it's a prediction of what the Fed's activity will be. And you can look through the different months and the different meetings that the Fed has. But right now, as of what is today, May 16th, they're forecasting, we can see that the blue line is where the Fed's rate is now at 5, and they're forecasting almost a 98% chance, 97% chance that there will be rate cuts, even up to 3 or 4 rate cuts by December 13th. And so initially I'm like, that's great. We need mortgage rates to fall. But I read an article today that talked about how you could end up freeing up more supply that way because there's this idea that people are stuck in their 3% mortgage. And so they would like to move, but they can't because they'd be giving up a 3% mortgage for a 6.5% mortgage, and nobody's going to do that. But if interest rates come down enough to spur people to ditch the 3% house and go for, say, a 4.5% house, you might see all those 3% houses get listed in exchange so they can find a different house. But the 4.5%, 5% mortgage is not enough to spike demand. So now you just have supply getting put into the market, which would have a downward pressure on prices. You could end up, that's 2 scenarios back to back right here, where you have Airbnb listings going up and then interest rates dropping to the point where people are selling their home, but it's not bringing new buyers into the market because it's still not affordable until those prices drop. There's that balance, almost like we need to get back to 3% in order to avoid price drops. But if we only get maybe halfway there, you're not going to get new buyers into the market. you'll only get more sellers, and that'll put downward pressure on prices. The fourth thing that I am looking at is the office vacancies and what that could do potentially to the real estate market for commercial loans. I talked about this in a previous video, and I'll just hit on it very briefly on this one. But you're basically at a historic vacancy rate, more than we've ever had in the US. Nationally, it looks like it's 12.9, higher than at the peak of the Great Recession, higher back then, and this goes back to like 2004. And so the problem with that is the way that interest rates, or sorry, commercial mortgage values work. If I can find a slide here where I can do a little drawing. Here's just a quick example of the value on commercial property. If something is yielding $100,000 a year in net operating income, that does not include the debt. That's just all the rents for people that are paying in the office space minus the expenses. It's yielding $100,000 a year. If the market area is a 4% cap rate, that building is worth $2.5 million. So we see a drop now because people aren't renewing their office space, and you can see anywhere from like a 12.9 that this article showed. I know of someone whose company renewed 2 of the 3 floors that they had during the pandemic in a 3-story building. So, that owner is seeing a drop of 33% in their net operating income. But I'll just do quick, easy numbers on this one and say, let's say you're a 4-story building in this scenario, and one of the floors is now vacant. So you're only getting $75,000 of net operating income this year. If the cap rate stays the same, the value of this particular property then goes to, let's see, 75,000 divided by a 4% cap rate goes to 1.875 million. Now, if you had financed this thing at 60% of 2.5 million, then you're going to owe times 0.6. You're going to owe 1.5 million on it. But now it's not worth the 2.5, it's worth 1.875. And the main issue that we have with commercial real estate is they're not 30-year fixed. They're like 3, 5, 7-year not mortgages, but loans that have a balloon payment. So there's a bunch, like say the economy was roaring in 2018, people are doing great, offices are full, the pandemic hits. Now you have all these vacancies in those buildings and your loan is coming due. It's not worth what you paid for it. It might not even be worth what you owe against it. And so we have this big amount. It's $1.4 trillion over the next 2 years that are coming due in commercial real estate that need to be refinanced. We're currently at high rates. It's not that they can just make more tenants show up, especially in the office supply category. So they're in a world of hurt. I see that scenario as a really slow kind of train wreck happening where you can see it coming a mile away, and it's just going to take a long time before all of it shakes out. You'll probably see a bank or two fail. You'll see some bailouts. They're going to have to renegotiate. You might see fake or artificially lowered interest rates so that people can just kind of kick the can down the road. But it could put a lot of pressure on different banks that specialize in commercial real estate. And then the last thing that I'll draw your attention to, there's a lot of talk about the debt ceiling. We've come across this multiple times, and they're going to get that solved. But I'm starting to worry about how sustainable it is for us to continue to get further and further into debt. We're at hitting $32 trillion. 2 presidents ago, we were at 19 trillion. So that's, just 4 years of Trump and 2.5 years of Biden. We've gone from 19 to 32. That's a big jump. And then, of course, it spiked, previously here during the Great Recession. And we've just kind of been off to the races. When you combine that with the fact that the government is paying such a high interest rate now on its debt, more than it has in a long time, look at some of these numbers on the treasury bills. If you're not sure how these work, this is basically the government loaning anybody in the world money for a certain number of time in a note or a bill, and then paying a fixed interest rate back on it. And a year ago, there's this column here. And so like, here's a 1 year treasury that was paying 0.47. That's all the government had to pay you back if you took out those. Now they're paying 4% on that. So as the rate spikes, or the total amount of debt spikes, we're also paying a much, much higher interest rate on that debt, which will cause it to spike even higher. So that's something that is kind of just building and could be unsustainable. The politics that they're playing about, we can't default, we won't default, we've never defaulted, all of that stuff. They use that every time we come up against the debt ceiling as leverage to try and get something. And I said that before, they'll get this solved, but it could, even if they solve it, let's say they make it 40 trillion, but like now you're talking about, 40 trillion at 5%. It's a lot different than 19 trillion at 1%. Those payments could become unsustainable and it may start to spiral. That's something that I'm concerned about. But for now, I think housing is still holding up pretty well. We'll see if any of these things spill out and come to fruition. So far, they're just concerns that are a little bit down the road, starting with student loan payment coming due. I think that could be, we could start to feel that around Christmas time, which could be bad for retail sales during Christmas. They really rely on that time of year for, to get sales and stuff right around the holidays. And if 60 days from June 30th is putting us at, the end of August, and then now we start seeing people get behind on their payments and credit card numbers are high. If they don't drop interest rates low enough to stop a bunch of layoffs, we could end up being in trouble. So that's what I'm looking at. If you like this content, please subscribe to the channel. If you want to see additional stuff, or if there's any other videos you'd like me to make, I would love for you to comment below and tell me what you want to see. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.